The following Pharma Essentia podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and cannot be considered as medical advice. Please speak to a healthcare professional before making any treatment decisions.
Hey, Josh.
Hey, Kay.
And hello, listeners. Welcome back to the PV Pod, Stories from the Marrow.
A podcast about polycythemia vera.
Brought to you by Pharma Essentia.
Thanks, Pharma Essentia. I'm really excited about today's episode, Kay.
It is very exciting to be doing a two-part episode. We really get to stretch our creative wings. I've always felt just a little limited by the one-episode structure. I mean, how can you really explore a story in only 20 to 30 minutes when some of the best episodes in TV history are two-parters with perfect cliffhangers?
Now, I'm going to stop you right there because as much as I love a sequel and expanding stories to their full potential, it's not really what I was getting at.
Oh.
I've just been really excited to hear from Gary again. He had such a great time talking with us, and we had such a great time listening to him last episode.
Right, that's true.
And now we get to hear about his incredible hike around Mont Blanc. How did it go? What was the hardest part? Were there bonding moments? Mont Blanc literally means white mountain. So was it really that white? I mean, I know it is because I was there, but I have so many questions.
Okay, now you're the one getting carried away. Let's see. What do you think the best way to jump back in is?
Do you think we could do a little recap for bringing people up to speed that maybe missed our last episode?
Of course.
Okay, so last episode we met Gary Linehan.
And although we started the episode with French accents, Gary himself is from Boston.
He's an educator and an avid hiker living with PV.
I'm a PV patient. I was diagnosed in 2021, January 2021.
And he shared with us some of his experiences on his PV journey, including an initial misdiagnosis.
I went to my primary, and she said it was ET, which is essential thrombocytosis, which means an excess number of platelets.
A slight fear of phlebotomy needles.
Oh God, I hated needles. I still hate needles.
And his passion for hiking, which has taken him all over the world and brought him closer to people both inside and out of the PV community.
I decided that I would hike the Long Trail, which is a long through hike through Vermont. It's 273 miles. I decided to do it as a fundraiser for the MPN Association, and we ended up raising close to $10,000.
We really loved that part of Gary's story, how he was able to foster community wherever he went and how he drew support from that community.
I'm drawing from that deep well that I think we all have, that we all try to access, that we build upon as we mature and grow up, and the support of family and friends.
Honestly, it's a great episode. If you haven't heard it, I highly recommend you go back and listen, but we sort of left it on a bit of a cliffhanger.
Typical of a well-done two-part episode.
When we last heard from Gary, he was preparing to hike Mont Blanc.
So physically, I'm doing a lot more hiking. I hike year-round. I've hiked Mount Washington probably a dozen times in the winter. I just went a couple of weeks ago and went on a 32-mile hike over a couple of days.
Let's do it. I'm so excited to hear about how it went. It's an extremely challenging hike.
Okay, I won't keep you in suspense for too long.
Okay, good.
Drumroll, please.
Come on.
The hike went really, really well.
It feels good. It feels accomplished. It feels fantastic. I feel fulfilled, not just because I completed it, but more because of the experience of being on the trail. I learned a long time ago, never hike for the end of the trail. Enjoy the process, and I truly enjoyed the journey.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. And I love what he said. Never hike for the end of the trail. You could apply that to anything, really. It's such a good metaphor for life.
Yes. I think hiking's a great metaphor for life. I think it lends itself very easily to life.
I'd love to hear more specifics about the trail and the group that went along with him. Mont Blanc is the tallest mountain in all of Europe, and I've heard the weather can be really unpredictable. Rain, snow, hail, intense winds. What was Gary's experience like?
Well, the challenge is, it's 110 miles. I think in total, I hiked about 117 with the various variants, they call them variants, side trails and summits that we went to. But I did hike in a group, so there was a group of 7 of us, including the guide. And I think as much as many people were physically prepared for it, I don't think everybody was mentally prepared for it. So I think helping them, helping others with gear, with water, with encouragement. But I like that. I coached for years. I coached various sports for high schools for years, and I really enjoyed that. So I developed some friendships that I think will be ongoing moving forward, so hopefully I can visit some of those people overseas as well.
I said it last episode, but Gary is a natural community builder. I'm not at all surprised by this.
It really does go to show that leaning on your community for support is critical within your PV journey and outside of it.
So we heard about the variables and Gary leaning into a bit of a leadership role with helping out some of the other group members, but what were Gary's favorite parts of this whole experience?
And some of the highlights, honestly, I mean, the views are incredible, but the connections I made with people, the food on the trail, we stopped into a fromagerie, which was, this country farm where they're making cheese, and the Beaufort cheese in the French region was absolutely tremendous. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I thoroughly enjoyed hot cocoa in Italy, which has to be eaten with a spoon, which is the way I remember my grandmother making it.
Ah, right, because the mountain is split halfway between Italy and France.
It's more like pudding rather than the hot cocoa that we know. Every time we came into an Italian hut, whether it was 90 degrees, I was ordering hot cocoa, which they thought was hilarious. But I knew I wasn't going to get it once I left Italy, so I drank my fill.
French cheese, Italian hot chocolate. Does it get any better than that? I'm getting hungry. Maybe I should go back and actually hike Mont Blanc.
I suspect there might be a little more to it than cheese and chocolate. We are going to be hearing more from Gary about his hike and about how PV impacted his trek right after this quick break.
So you're learning about PV on the PV Pod, Stories from the Marrow. Now get ready to take the next steps on your PV journey with What's Next PV, an educational site on everything polycythemia vera.
Knowing what's next can help inform the decisions you and your doctor make about the future and is important to your health. What's Next PV can help you understand test results, set goals for the management of your PV, and make a plan to advocate for yourself. Check out www.pvbonemarrow.com to learn more. And we are back.
Thanks for sticking around. When we last left Gary, he was full of cheese and hot chocolate.
My ideal state of being.
Now I'd like to hear about how his hike went as he dealt with his symptoms of polycythemia vera.
Sometimes I'll have aches and pains that come along with hiking. It's interesting, though, when I got off the plane, my left knee was bothering me. I had knee surgery back in 2022, and it was bothering me for about 3 to 4 days into the hike. And then I would say the 5th day I put my knee brace on. I had knee surgery back in 2022. My knee it felt better. And the longer we hiked, I'd say by day 7, I was feeling in my groove. I had my mountain legs. Things were good. It's still, it's still tough, but that's what you expect on a trail like that. We're getting over 45,000 steps a day. And I don't track my miles or anything like that. But I certainly wasn't hiking as many miles as I would if I was home either. So it was good. It was just, my health was excellent. I'm very fortunate, knock on wood. I'm thankful. Every step is a gift.
Gary is a wealth of wisdom. Every step is a gift?
So he was getting about 45,000 gifts every day on that trail. I mean, how impressive is that?
That's awesome. I'm also really glad to hear that his PV symptoms weren't bothering him on the trail. I don't have PV, but if I did, I think I might be a little hesitant to do a hike like this, knowing some of the symptoms could be fatigue and headaches and burning in your extremities. I imagine it would be really daunting to take that first step.
For Gary, it's all about not letting PV control his life and living in spite of it. And just like he did last episode, Gary's got a great quote about it.
It's The Laughing Heart by Charles Bukowski. You can't beat death, but you can beat death in life sometimes. The more often you learn to do it, the more light there will be. Your life is your life. Know it while you have it. You are marvelous. The gods delight in you. It's just a great poem, and it speaks to me having PV to live it. I mean, it starts out, your life is your life. Don't let it be clubbed into dank submission. Be on the watch. There are ways out, and there is light somewhere. So even though, we may have a rare disease, we have blood cancer, there is light and there is a way out. And you got to find what your light is. It may not be hiking, it may not be physical activity, but it could be writing, it could be poetry, it could be art. But there's a light somewhere, there's an outlet for you somewhere, helping others. I get so much from helping new hikers, young students, but there's a way to be viable and to thrive in this life despite having cancer. And I encourage people to find that. Embrace life. Cancer may walk with you, but that doesn't define who you are.
I'm speechless. Gary kind of said it all right there.
I really like how he encourages all kinds of outlets. It's not necessarily about hiking, it's about living and doing what you love despite your diagnosis.
Cancer may walk with you, but that doesn't define who you are. Does Gary maybe have a story from that hike that illustrates how he embodies this mindset?
So I think the second day into it, and my wife would tell you, and I don't know, I tend to meet a lot of people and I get to know a lot of people wherever I go. I for whatever reason, it's easy for me to make connections, even though I see myself as an introvert. And by day 2, I had met these 2 young women, I'd say they're late 20s, and they were from Seattle. And, we sat down at the same table in a mountain hut, Refuge Elisabetta in the Italian Alps. And it was very crowded and it was raining. We just came out of a hailstorm. And I was talking to them, and being a male hiker, you never ask, women their name. You don't want to be too intrusive, but you're polite and you get to know them. So I saw them the next day. Because they were from Washington, I just nicknamed them the Seahawks, the mighty Seahawks. And they every time I saw them, it was very encouraging. So they seemed to be staying at the same place as we were. And the night we were at the Refuge Walter Bernardi, the hut's named after a famous Italian alpinist. I took my hiking chair, it's a collapsible chair, I put it out for the sunset, and I was sitting there in my winter coat and winter hat because it gets cool at night, and I'm just writing in my journal. And they took a picture of me, and one of the young ladies came up to me and said, "I just took this picture of you, it just seems so perfect, you seem to be having a moment, can I airdrop it?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And I didn't tell them my story of why I was there, but I thanked them for the picture, and it meant a lot because I was writing about my father just passing in June, my journey with PV, where it's taken me, and I've learned to be thankful for the bad things that have happened in my life because it has also given me a gift to learn from them. So, the hike went on. A couple days later, I would see them, and I ended up meeting the people that they met and meeting more people. And then we came into it wasn't a hut, but it was a place where they, and I can't remember the name of it, make baked goods and serve lunch, and you can fill up water. It's really neat. And all these people were like cheering, "Hey, it's Gary, it's Gary, it's Gary." And the guide said, "Oh my gosh," she's like, "everybody knows Gary." She goes, "I've lived in France my whole life, and I've never got a greeting like this at a hut."
Of course, everyone on this hike knew his name. I wouldn't expect anything less from our Gary.
So it was kind of funny. And then by day 7, we were sitting outside in the lawn at an auberge, which is like a hiker hotel, if you will. It's a cross between a hotel and a hostel. You still get your own room. And I told them what that picture meant to me and the fact that they had captured that moment. And I told them about my journey with PV. And they gave me a big hug. They loved hearing it. They're like, why didn't you tell us on that day, that night? I said, I didn't want to burden you with something that heavy. I didn't want you to see me in that way. I wanted us to enjoy the journey. But we're close to the end of the trip, and they were finishing, I think, the next day. I wouldn't see them after that night. So I wanted them to know what it meant. So, there's a picture I can share as well with the 4 of them that I met, 2 of them being the Mighty Seahawks. They connected with me on Instagram. They want to stay in touch. And I thought that was nice. So that was a nice moment.
So, in the midst of this incredibly challenging hike, Gary was meeting new people, making new friends, giving out nicknames, as well as journaling and reflecting.
He really doesn't let a single moment go to waste.
Like he said last episode, Gary is sucking the marrow out of life, and he's not letting PV slow him down.
So then, what's next for Gary?
I'll continue to hike when I can find the time. My wife and I are also taking up biking and mountain biking, so I'll try to get more of that. I hear it's good to bike to keep your knees in shape for mountain climbing. Try to inspire people, get more people connected to do that.
You cannot keep Gary off these mountains. Does he have any specific hikes in mind for his next one?
I do want to do the GR20 in Corsica. That's probably where I'm setting my next sights.
The GR20 in Corsica? What is that?
So the GR20 is one of the most difficult trails in Europe, and it's on the island of Corsica. Corsica is an island off the coast of France, belongs to France, used to belong to Italy a long time ago, and it's, interestingly enough, also the place where Napoleon was born. It's an intense trail.
The GR20 is an 112-mile-long trail, and it's commonly known as the toughest long-distance hiking trail in all of Europe.
What is it that makes it so difficult?
Along the trail, you're walking on a good deal of loose rock, and like with Mont Blanc, the weather is really unpredictable with both extreme cold and extreme heat. Not to mention, the trail includes over 1,000 meters of vertical ascent in just 5 kilometers.
That I can't even imagine. But I'm also kind of not surprised that Gary's got his sights set on that. He's always up for a big challenge. Does he have any plans to continue advocating for others with PV?
Of course he does.
Encouraging people in the networks I know to not let cancer define them, to live despite their prognosis or their diagnosis, and that understanding that, every day is a gift. With or without cancer, I think it's important to understand and be cognizant that, this journey is a gift. Being here is a gift. There's no better place.
I love that. And I love that he leads by example. He's like, here's all that I can do in spite of cancer. Imagine what you could do too.
Something that also keeps coming up is Gary's deep sense of gratitude. Grateful for every step. Never hike for the end of the trail. Enjoy the process. Being here is a gift. There's no better place.
An attitude which I imagine is really difficult to maintain after a cancer diagnosis. So it's really inspiring to hear Gary's out there living by these principles.
Josh, I am so glad we got the chance to talk with Gary again.
And I'm really glad we could use this platform to help spread his message.
Thank you, Gary, for coming down off those mountains long enough to talk to us not once, but twice.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to another great episode of the PV Pod Stories from the Marrow.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
PV Pod, Stories from the Marrow, is produced by Believe Limited and Bloodstream Media, and made possible thanks to our sponsor, Pharma Essentia. The PV Pod is hosted by me, Kay Vermeil, and my co-host, Josh Bragg. If you like the show, please share it with anyone for whom it might make a difference, and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We'll see you next time.